So far, side proposition has been oversimplifying, and so far, side proposition has been making extremely far-fetched claims in this debate. From the first point on, we will ask them to draw the line. We will ask them to tell us which is the point below which and above which people are either unfit or fit to vote. When talking about complicated things we can vote on, such as Brexit, such as immigration, what amount of information is the amount of information which actually benefits you? If you're talking about this basic test that the side proposition actually gave us, which 20 simple questions that the average person can actually grasp would you ask that makes them understand this complex issue which people with even economic degrees do not understand to the full extent? And how will this benefit any decision? We have not seen any reasons from side proposition. Besides from tackling their case, in my substantive speech, I will also give the argument that minorities and poor people will actually be excluded if you put this test into the government and if you make this a requirement for voting. So the first thing that they need to prove is how informed is informed enough. Their first argument of justification says that without the right amount of information you cannot make a right decision. But we're telling you that most political decisions are extremely complex, extremely nuanced, and you would need to understand very far-fetched, very detailed analysis to actually make any change in what you would vote. You cannot simply make a basic test that most people would pass that would include these issues, that would make people realize how big these things are. No, thank you. You cannot make people understand global economics through a small test you can study for in a matter of days and you can take in one day before going to the voting booth. This is not simple, and this is very far-fetched, and side prop lacks the mechanism. How do people actually gain this knowledge and turn it into a better, more informed choice? These are extremely detailed, extremely nuanced questions, and they need to prove this. On the second point of society and minorities, they haven't proven to us how this actually stops the racism, the xenophobia, the hate speech that they actually want. Which 20 questions would you ask a racist to make him stop having these bad values that he has? You need to ask them questions about the concrete policy they're voting on. You said this yourself. This is, let's say, an EU referendum. You put in 20 questions about the EU. How does this make anybody change their life values? People who are educated can still be very dumb, can still be very racist and very xenophobic. Nigel Farage has degrees. Donald Trump went to an Ivy League school, yet he's still a racist, yet he's still xenophobic. Which amount of education makes you stop having these uninformed opinions, especially when you're talking about the basic tests that side proposition is trying to put through in this debate, which means they have no effect. They have taken this basic test and they can't talk about effects in this debate because their main assumption is that most people will be able to pass this. This is a really simple thing, right? So they lack effects, they lack the mechanisms. No thank you. Yeah, so that's on the point of hate speech. After that, I'd like to point out that they don't actually tackle our arguments. We still have the first argument talking about how the good decision is actually just one people agree on. The main point of democracy is asking people for their viewpoints, not asking just educated people. There's no line which we can actually draw and say people above this make better decisions, people below this make better decisions. There's no way you can tell when people will make a good decision and when this decision will actually benefit society. The only thing you can do in democracy is ask a lot of people, no thank you, see their viewpoints and find yourself in the middle. That's the point of democracy. Asking all people for their opinion, and then you will necessarily find yourself on a moderate ground which is mostly beneficial for most of the society. Same goes for the second argument that we have put through in this debate, which says that, no thank you, that democracy means equality, that democracy means everybody having the same power. And at the moment at which you have a body which actually decides who gets to vote and who can't, this whole principle is unjustified. Now, let me tell you, this is the same principle that tells us why we think slavery is bad and why we think dictatorships are bad, because people all have the same amount of power and you have no right, you have no justification to put through a body in the state which actually gets to decide who can vote and who can't. The only reasonable criteria for this, no thank you, would be something like extreme mental illness or are you 18, so are you responsible for your own actions? Anything above that means taking a step towards inequality of people because you have a body deciding some people are less worth simply because they know less. After that, they try to tell you that they will get a more accountable decision. We'll talk about that after the POI.
Explain to us why a vote is legitimate when you don't fully understand what that vote even entails.
Thank you. Fully understanding a vote means fully understanding all of the consequences that your decision will make. Let's say that you're voting on Brexit. I would argue that you need at least an economic degree to fully grasp the consequences of Brexit. You cannot have a basic test and make people understand how the whole European Union works. You not even yourself can claim to understand what Brexit actually does. And if you can't, point it out to me in 3 points and make it simple, make it clear. The point of more accountability is that it's simply not true. People will not be more accountable, the government will not be more accountable towards the people, because the issue is not the government making claims that are theoretically impossible. The issue is government making claims and then after simply saying, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. The issue is not the government saying everybody gets 1,000 euros every month, because why not? The issue is not stupid, impossible decisions. The issue is decisions which do not actually get put in through legislation, and side prop does not solve this. On the last point of it's difficult to access information, we're going to tackle that, no thank you, through our substantive points. This is directly in the clash. So minorities and poor people are generally less informed. This is due to their lack of opportunities. This is due to systemic inequalities. This is due to racism and discrimination. A pure example of this are the African Americans, where black schools in America are funded less. Their teachers are less motivated. Their kids have lower grades. So it would be reasonable to say that they are less likely to pass this test because they have a smaller amount of general education they can use to pass this same test. No, thank you. And what happens here is that this strips them of the political capital which they so desperately need in order to have any chance in influencing the government to make policies which actually help them. The state chooses to ignore uneducated people. The state does not educate them. It tries to pass this basic test of 15 to 20 questions, which is not tackling the problem. The problem with uninformed minorities is not that they don't know the basic points of the EU. It's systemic discrimination. It's lack of education. These are the instances which you need to solve if you truly claim you're uplifting minorities. Black people in America do not have the issue of not knowing 15 basic points on the polls. The issue of black people in America is general bad education, is general systemic discrimination. And this is what causes them to be in an extremely bad position in society, not knowing some basic questions about some political poll or some political choice. So in my speech today, I have proven to you that side proposition in their next speech needs to draw the line. They need to tell us what amount of information is the amount of information that actually benefits your decision. How does this mechanism work? How does knowing basic things about an election actually mean that you understand the short term, that you understand the long term, and that your decision is all around better? They need to tackle the point of minorities. They need to tackle the point of justification, because we have clearly proven to you that society should be equal, and we cannot have a body choosing who can vote and who can, because this is a step towards inequality, and nobody has the legitimacy to do this. For the same reason, side proposition does not have the legitimacy for their motion and shall not pass this debate. Thank you.